lot. I mean, you mentioned some great ones. There are a couple of throws in that San Francisco game where that Luther Burden 35-yard
Oh,
touchdown
yeah.
throw in the middle of the field, like that's elite level quarterback.
Welcome into another great week, another great conversation here on Cousins Conversations. And I have another Nicholas as well, Nicholas Moreano from the Nicholas Moreano Show, also from Chicago as well. So we're just going to have a great episode here with the Nicholases.
I like it from one Nick to another, like you said when we were offline. But yeah, looking forward to our discussion here.
So here we go. So this is my big first question for you. All right. So Hammond, Arlington Heights, or other for the stadium?
Anything with the stadium, I almost roll my eyes at this point. But right now Hammond is technically in the lead with the Bears and their board of directors moving forward with that direction as of right now. There's been some soil testing for in the Hammond area. They've also done soil testing in Arlington Heights as well. But yeah, it's been a prolonged situation at this point. I mean, it goes all the way back, what now, 2023, 2022, even if you go about like buying the actual Arlington racehorse track. So it's a long process. There have not been any shovels in the ground. There's drilling, not actual shovels, but I guess Hammond's in the lead as of right now. But I think ideally the Bears do want to be still in the state of Illinois, want to be at Arlington Heights, and we'll see what ends up happening with that entire situation.
Who would have thought that you would be doing some videos on soil testing, huh?
I know that was not on the bingo card for me in terms of Bears content, but when it's June going into July where there's not a lot of news, I guess soil testing's at the top of the discussing point at this point in time.
There we go. And I saw your last video as well about the Bears offseason. ESPN giving them the offseason grade of a B, and or B plus, and you wanted to disagree a little bit. So just give the reasoning there a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean that they gave him a B plus for ESPN. They account for everything in terms of acquisitions and free agency, the draft, contracts, all of that. But going into the draft, free agency, I would argue that the two biggest needs on that football team were left tackle, given their situation, and also pass rusher. Well, the Bears didn't do much to address either one of those positions, and there's still needs going into this 2026 season. So B plus seemed a little rich for me. I did like the moves that they did make. You had to address the safety position with both starting safeties leaving in free agency and Brisker and Kevin Byard. He had to revamp the center position after Drew Dalman retired. So you go and sign Garrett Bradbury. You draft Logan Jones from Iowa, who I think is going to be that future starter after this season, or maybe later on this year, depending on his career growth in his first year. So I like those moves. I just see left tackle and edge rusher. It doesn't matter what football team you're on. Those are going to be premium positions. And the Bears didn't do much to address both of them. Left tackle is a competition, Braxton Jones. Then you signed a former first-round draft pick, Jedrick Wills. I still think that's Braxton Jones' job to lose at this point. We'll see how training camp goes, though. And then pass rusher, you're really banking on improved coaching and the same group of guys that struggled for a majority of the year last year to come out and play better in 2026. That's a big risk in my opinion, but that's what the Bears are going to go with at this point in time. Montez Sweat, I think, had a pretty decent year, but you need guys that are coming off season-ending injuries, and Dio Dangbo, Shamar Turner, and then Austin Booker to ascend in this next upcoming season. So it's a lot of faith to put in that D line and not having new guys there, but that's the path that the Bears ended up choosing.
You were talking about the offensive line and the needs there. I think that was something that probably should have been more addressed in the draft. And you're looking at all the offensive players that were drafted. You know, you're adding on to the tight end room with Roche and all those guys. So I'm under like the impression that maybe Ben Johnson has a little bit of a say in the room with Ryan Poles. What do you think about that, and just kind of him adding more to the offense, or maybe defense and offensive line are more of a need to fill?
Yeah, absolutely. And the Bears are always going to approach this best player available. That's what they always say. That's what Ryan Poles has always reiterated anytime he goes and stepped up to a podium. But when you do see a Sam Roush and a Xavier Thomas, another wide receiver, that consensus, I think, from draft experts was maybe a late day 3 pick, but ends up getting selected in the 3rd round, you immediately think, well, this guy's going to Ben Johnson in his offense. How can he maximize a speedster like that in his offense to complement Luther Burden III and Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, and Colston Loveland, Sam Roush as well? So, yeah, no doubt, like, Ben Johnson has a say. But I also think that there is a collaboration here. Like, Ryan Poles is not drafting Sam Roush or Xavier Thomas or Logan Jones without there being a deep discussion with Ben Johnson. The rest of that staff knowing this is the best player at this respective spot when they are picking, and the entire team feels comfortable with it. It's not just, what ended up happening maybe with previous eras with general managers that were in charge. So definitely on board with it. So I'll say this: when they drafted Xavier Thomas, I definitely questioned the pick, and I still want to see how that works out, and even Sam Roush to a certain extent. But when you understand that this is Ben Johnson's offense that loves to run, 12, 13 personnel sets, it makes sense. When you think about how a guy that runs a low 4-3, what he can do to stretch the field vertically to open up other pass catchers, yeah, it makes sense why Ben Johnson would want these guys for his offense.
And I saw your breakdown on Colston Loveland as well. We're thinking, like, when he's drafted, like, okay, and he hasn't really done anything the first half of the season, we're like, okay, well what's he doing? And then the second half of the year, he's the best player out there on the field offensively. So how do you see these 4 tight ends working now out there on the field?
Yeah, no, I think it just creates a lot of complications for opposing defenses. And I think that one of the best plays to represent that happened in the wild card victory against the Green Bay Packers, where the Bears do line up in a 13 personnel set where they have multiple tight ends. And then right in pre-snap, they flex out Colston Loveland on the 2-point conversion. You got the Green Bay Packers in a personnel grouping where, well, now you have maybe an extra DB on the field that isn't used to playing that many snaps, but now he's going up against a 1st-round draft pick, number 10 overall, and Colston Loveland flexed out left ISO. And that's what I think Ben Johnson can do when you have packages that have bigger personnel groupings, but yet these guys are capable of running downfield like a Colston Loveland, a Sam Roush, and Cole Kmet as well. You still have plenty of options. And I think that's what the type of bind he's going to put on opposing defensive coordinators. Do I put another DB out there? Do I put the bigger bodied linebacker who may not be as fast? It's like, this is all being thought about in split seconds. And now you have to adapt to what Ben Johnson's doing. I think that's a big thing too. Ben Johnson doesn't allow the defense to dictate what he wants to do. It's the reverse of that, if anything. He wants to dictate and play on his terms and utilize his personnel to his advantage and, run the plays that he wants. So it should be exciting because that was just year 1 where a lot of these players, I remember like these training camp days where in OTAs where Ben Johnson's just calling out guys. You're running the wrong route. And there's some swear words that I can't say on here, but now with everybody have a better understanding of what year 2 is going to be in Ben Johnson's offense, I think that only maximizes the flexibility that he'll have in, his second year as being the head coach here.
I know we're all excited for year 2 based on what year 1 did. Do you think that went beyond expectations for what you expected?
I would say so. I mean, I don't think I could probably look back. I wasn't expecting the Bears to win the division, win a playoff game, and, end as a top 10 scoring offense. But what you saw, I think, is the foundation from Ben Johnson's team of what I think can create consistency for this, because we've seen one and done years for the Bears. 2018 obviously comes to mind with Matt Nagy and what they were able to accomplish there, but how the Bears rely and utilize that rushing attack with both running backs and DeAndre Swift, Kyle Monanka, and that offensive line. That's the foundation of Ben Johnson's offense. I get he's creative. He'll at times put 2 quarterbacks on the field, have Caleb Williams catching touchdowns. That's great, and that's a part of what Ben Johnson can bring, but the man wants to run the football. He loves to run the football. They brought in the free agent acquisitions that they did to utilize the type of offense that he wants to run. So that, I think, is just a building block of what Ben Johnson wants to do. And yeah, it easily, exceeded my expectations, being the number 3 rushing offense in total yards last season. But now they're building off of that. And then once you establish that run game like they have, well, everything that they can do pass-wise, that just builds off of what they've established with the running game.
And what Caleb did, beating the Packers twice and in the playoffs as well, I think anybody's ready to take a bullet for him as far as Bears fans go out here. But did you hear what Mark Schlereth said about Caleb Williams this week?
I didn't. What did he have to say about
Okay,
Caleb
so Mark
Williams?
Schlereth said that Caleb Williams is not a great QB, but a great playmaker. What are your thoughts on that?
So I don't quite agree with that, but I do see where he's coming with that accusation there with being a playmaker, but not maybe the best quarterback as of right now. Because I think when you see Caleb Williams and you dissect his entire game, yes, a lot of what he does well is out of structure, where he's able to avoid sacks, which helps Ben Johnson out when the defense does have the right play call and it beats what he called offensively. Well, Caleb Williams is that X factor to not only beat that play, but then make something happen. Now, that was year one of Ben Johnson's offense. There's a lot that goes into it. When Caleb Williams starts playing more in rhythm on time, I would like to see what Mark Schlereth would have to say, because I do expect that in year two of Ben Johnson's offense, where it's not so much seeking maybe the 20-yard chunk play, which is Ben Johnson. He loves his explosives. That's what they're always going to try to do. But it's okay to take that check down. It's okay to take the 5-yard gain instead of looking for maybe the 20-yard pickup in the middle of the field that isn't quite as open. But there's always going to be people that doubt Caleb Williams and his ability. The completion percentage always gets brought up, and the goals set before the season was 70%. Only one quarterback in the league hit that mark. That was Drake May last year. So it's a great number to try and get, but you don't have to hit 70% to be, amongst the elite quarterbacks in this league. It's always good to be closer to that number. But once Caleb Williams, I think, understands more of what Ben Johnson wants, and he did a recent interview with the Kelsey brothers on Gridiron Heights, and was saying that he didn't feel that he was on the same page until the second Minnesota Vikings game. That was in week 11 or week 12. So if that's the case, and now you're already having a better foundation going into this year, I do expect more completions from Caleb Williams. I expect the offense to be more efficient. And then I expect him to not have to always improvise, to put on the Superman cape as much as he did. I think it would actually be a good thing if he didn't have to do that. That means you're having a more well-rounded offense, playing on time, in rhythm, and getting closer to that 70% completion percentage. I don't think Caleb Williams will ultimately get that this year, and he may never, but it doesn't mean that he's not a good quarterback, or he's not playing the quarterback as well as he could. So it's interesting comments, but I'm curious to see how that narrative kind of changes after this year.
I hope it does, because I know we're all ready to have a quarterback that we actually like here in Chicago for once. And Caleb's definitely doing that with what he did. There's so many great throws. Talk about the jump man throw, which is part of the Madden cover. The throws to DJ Moore, Colston Loveland, Komet in the playoffs. Which throw is your favorite? Do you have one?
Oh man, wow. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, you mentioned some great ones. There are a couple of throws in that San Francisco game where that Luther Burden 35-yard touchdown throw in the middle of the field, that's elite level quarterback. And I want to say that the one that he threw to Colston Loveland in that game, I believe he gets the defense to jump off sides. So he has that free play. And for Bears fans that have been tormented by the Green Bay Packers, you know exactly what Aaron Rodgers did consistently. Drew the defense offside, got a free play, and made something happen. That play, I think, goes into what quarterbacking is all about. Draw the defense offside with your cadence, survey downfield, and then rifle a ball for a touchdown to Colston Loveland, your playmaker downfield. That one, as I'm kind of reflecting on some of these throws, that might be my favorite one, just because I factor in everything that goes into it. Yes, it was a rifle throw from Caleb, but everything he had to do before that, that's elite level quarterbacking.
I think that was the more of the coming out game for Caleb, where we're thinking, wow, this could, the offense is actually good now. I think that was the game where we all realized that, hey, we have something special here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, even there was I believe it was week 3 after the Bears had lost, the home opener against Minnesota. They get blown out by Detroit. And then Dallas Cowboys and Matt Eberflus's defense come to Soldier Field, and Caleb Williams and the Bears, they light them up. And I think of the flea flicker plays from Caleb to Luther Burden for a 60-plus yard touchdown. So there were definitely glimpses, but it took time for sure. There were also some games like that first one in Minnesota that they end up, or the second one in Minnesota that they end up winning on the kick return that happens, and then Cairo Santos field goal. But like there's some where you want to see more, and that's where that consistency you want to see in year 2 of Ben Johnson's offense.
Any free agents that you like this year? I know I've seen some of your videos. You're high on Devin Bush coming in, kind of replacing Tremaine Edmonds there in the middle. What do you think were some of the great signings this offseason for the Bears?
Yeah, no, I'm curious to see how that one actually works out for the Chicago Bears, a 3-year, $30 million deal. And when you look at Devin Bush, like last year was phenomenal for him, for the Cleveland Browns. He did a lot of everything, 2 pick sixes in what he was able to accomplish there in Cleveland. But, this is going on to year 8, if I'm not mistaken, but it was his rookie year. That was his second most productive season if you're just looking at baseline stats. And so there's a lot in between there, an ACL tear and then some mediocre season. So the Bears obviously liked what they saw last year, believe that he's healthy enough, a guy that is extremely fast for the position and is obviously a fit for Dennis Allen's scheme. So curious to see how that one plays out next to TJ Edwards. You re-signed DeMarco Jackson. You obviously have drafted a couple of linebackers in the later rounds the last 2 years. So yeah, that one they need to pan out. There's a good financial commitment to Bush, and that one needs to play out. But you also just want to see like Garrett Bradbury, and even though like the Bears, traded for him with the New England Patriots, but they got such stability, consistency, and really good play from Drew Dahlman last season. And that was such, I think, an important position, especially for the first year of Ben Johnson's offense, to where you can have someone that Caleb can lean on for that veteran leadership to call out some of the plays that were going on from the defense. And Garrett Bradbury needs to serve that same type of purpose. And if that can't happen, are you kind of forcing yourself to, well, let's see what the rookie has in Logan Jones. They had plenty of experience in Iowa, and Iowa's offensive linemen, as you know, come into the league ready, right? So I wouldn't be opposed to seeing that, but I think Garrett Bradbury is also one of those signings that, one of those trades that happened in the offseason that does need to pan out. And of course, you get a safety like Kobe Bryant to replace the NFL interception leader in Kevin Byard. Like that is something that I'm curious to see how that looks in Dennis Allen's offense. And that could take time too, with the rookie and Dylan Thieneman as his counterpart on the opposite side. So if that chemistry takes a little bit, I completely understand, but also the Bears led the league in takeaways. I don't know if that's something that just happens again, because the takeaways are so they fluctuate. But yeah, those are like the bigger signings that you look at, and the Bears need them to pan out, especially if they want this season to go the way they want.
The calendar did turn to July, so towards the end of the month here, training camp is starting up. We're thinking more about football, which is a good thing. What are you looking for in training camp? What are some storylines that you have or expectations that you have going in?
Yeah, so I mean, thank goodness, thank goodness that we're in July, and we're so close to real football actually, happening with training camps. But I think I'll still continue to look at this offense, how it looks through the dog days of training camp, the fluidity of things. And I just remember training camp last year where, there were times where Caleb Williams and that offense are taking time with the huddle and just getting out of it, and then going through the proper motions and pre-snap, everything that happens pre-snap in Johnson's offense. So seeing how much improved that looks in a second training camp with Ben Johnson, that will be something that is definitely, catches my eye. But seeing how Dylan Thieneman does look, because when, just putting on the game tape from Oregon, like he does play at a different speed. It is quick. It is fast. It is violent. Now you could see bits and pieces of that in training camp, no live tackling, of course, but seeing him make plays, I absolutely want to see that. And then sticking with the secondary here, like you had such a banged up secondary last year with Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon. How available are those guys, specifically with a guy like Kyler Gordon, who's already missed time in OTAs, and that defense finally saw all of its pieces last year in the playoffs, and had some pretty good performances in the second half against Green Bay Packers, and then for the game against Matthew Stafford and the Rams. So watching to see how that secondary meshes up, and then, the joint practices. For people who haven't been to joint practices, maybe want to go to preseason games, do what you want to do, but I love covering joint practices, and the Bears have 2 scheduled with the Bengals and Titans, and those should provide some really good matchups. Both the Bears offensive line versus the interior defensive lineman for both of those teams. Like, now we're talking about the Bengals actually having some defensive players, which is, kind of different from what they usually have over there. But also you have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and the matchups they'll present to the Bears in their secondary, and, things like that. So I'm really looking forward to, again, training camp getting here, and like those type of storylines going into training camp.
Counting down the days. And what's your first memory as a Bears fan? Because if you go back, for me, like, I remember, Devin Hester running back the kick at the Super Bowl, although it didn't end very well. But before that, it's, Rex Grossman out there, Kyle Orton out there, quarterbacks. But Brian Urlacher was my favorite as a kid, favorite player. So I'm glad he's in the Hall of Fame now. But what are some of what's your first memory as a Bears fan?
Man, first memory. I want to say they played that 2006 season first week against Green Bay Packers, if I'm not mistaken, and Devin Hester had a punt return for a touchdown in that game. But that was really the first season that I started getting into football. So my uncle used to take me to a game ever since the following season in a winter game. So there had to be some kind of snow, or you had to battle the frigid temperatures. So I remember doing that as a kid, just kind of growing up and going to Soldier Field, and, just watching, maybe sometimes the Bears were just not in it. There were a lot of bad years after that Super Bowl year, right? But it was just so much fun to watch the Bears in person from Soldier Field, that vantage point. Like, it's so different when you go to your first game. And I remember asking, like, where's the yellow line? Where's the first down line? Like, what's going on here? So it's, I remember those. And obviously, before that, like the Super Bowl kickoff return for a touchdown from Devin Hester. It was actually my uncle's birthday that day. And I remember just having so many mixed emotions and hating the Indianapolis Colts for a long time because of, making my uncle cry. But yeah, that's really when I started getting into it. Then I started to play the sport, and it kind of just went from there, where everybody in high school knew me as the biggest Bears fan. So whether they won or lost, some people were like, high-fiving me or just taking jabs at me because my team had lost a big game against the Green Bay Packers again, whatever it may be. But it definitely started during that Super Bowl season, and here we are now.
It's all about those childhood memories, for sure. Now you've turned that into a job now, though, for you. You're talking about Bears on your channel. You're working for David Kaplan over at The Recap. You're writing for Roundtable as well, all about the Bears. So how have you now turned this from a fandom into a job for you?
Yeah, so for me, when I went to the University of Iowa for undergrad and open major, had no idea what I wanted to do. But I did have this passion for football that I just didn't know how to quite tap into. So I remember randomly after my freshman year of college, turning on ESPN like I normally would. Just got done with the workout and turned it on, and I saw Field Yates, who does everything for the NFL, fantasy. You'll see him consistently if you watch the NFL and things like that. But I remember just reaching out to him over on, back then, Twitter, now X.
It's still Twitter. We can call it that.
Yeah, it's still Twitter. It's that. Let's get that straight.
Yeah.
So I reached out to him, just added him like, hey, Field, I have a couple of questions how you got your dream job. If you see this, I would love to talk. And he reached back out to me, sent me a DM with his email, and he put a lot of thought into this, and he didn't have to. I'm just a random, college student looking for advice from somebody that I see on television. But, he detailed like what his journey was. He was a scout, and he did create a blog early on, and then he started creating consistent content. And then within that message, he said, have a passion for what you do. And so something in there just clicked, like, let me start this blog. Let me write about the Bears, even though I at the time didn't have a journalistic background, didn't know how to write AP style or, sequence paragraphs, things like that. But I kind of kept up with it. I started making recap videos that for a 5-minute video probably took me an hour and a half to record. It was insane. I had to kick my roommates out. Like, I can't do this in front of you. Like I just can't. But I kept that up throughout my undergrad at Iowa. Got recognized by a bigger Bears blog at the time called the Bears Brothers. They brought me on. We started creating more content. The 2018 season happens, which kind of helps us blow up as a YouTube channel. And then from there, it was like creating that consistent content, then getting credentialed to cover practices, preseason games, and then even regular season games as a blog. And, eventually we got, fortunate to be bought out by a company called CHGO. And then I'm covering the Bears professionally, going to road games and, covering the game at Soldier Field, being consistently at Hallis Hall and Lake Forest to cover practices, ask, coaches and players questions at press conferences. But it started out because of a simple DM. And that's why, like I always tell, I taught at DePaul for a quarter, this last quarter, like you can use social media to be such a huge advantage for you if you use it the right way. And if you actually reach out and actually want to learn and, if you idolize people that are in this profession, the worst that anybody can say is no or not reply at all. So reach out, see what they have to say, and you never know where that can go. But that's like the snapshot version of how I got to be where I am and what I'm doing now. But yeah, it's I'm very fortunate because I know that, covering the Bears is something that not a lot of people get to do. But I remember too, when I was at Iowa, when I told my professors like, hey, that's what I want to do. I want to cover the Bears. Well, it's like, that's a top 3 media market, Chicago. I'm like, I know, but that's what I want to do. And so it ended up working out. And, the thing is too, there's a little bit of luck that gets involved. There's got to be that right job at the right opportunity. And you got to be at that point in your career where, you're hopefully ready for that. So that's how it ended up happening. And, how, like I said, how I ended up being where I'm at today.
What did you see as the response to your YouTube channel? Because I've seen how many subscribers you had. So on that side of things, how have you been able to get people to buy into what you're now saying over these years?
Yeah. I think, it does help that I've been doing it for almost a decade now, right? Talking about the Bears, putting my opinions out there on social media. So there is a track record of what I've been doing. So when I'm doing my own content, my YouTube channel or stuff for the recap, or even when I'm writing from Roundtable Sports, it's not coming from somebody who's just been doing this. And maybe there's going to be a ton of people who have never seen my content before, but I try to treat everything the same exact way from a professional angle. If I'm writing a column, you see where I'm coming from. If it is a news piece, you know that you're going to get the necessary information and then know why that's important. So for people who have tuned in, who are just tuning in, you're going to see exactly why, I've been doing this for over a decade. And that's where I think there's like that consistency with people who tune in every week, who read an article every time I publish something, or people who don't. So that's where I still need to continue to always, like, the thing too is I'm always willing to learn. Like this media landscape is always changing. You have to adapt. And if you don't, you will fall behind. So that's what I think has also helped. I'm always willing to try the new thing, use a different technology, try the different software, and try to see how that can maybe connect with different audiences that I, haven't connected with before.
When did you see this shift into the more digital media? Because I remember coming out of school in 2018 and local news was still kind of the way to go with things, but now it's shifted to, podcasts like this one and doing like short videos on Instagram, Twitter, wherever. So when did you see that shift? Because it seems like you just went on it and now you've grown into it.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I don't know when exactly, but I just remembered what I was doing when I was at Iowa. It was already the podcast world, and there just weren't as many Bears podcasts. But for whatever reason, I think it was the growth of the channel where we're like, we're doing this the right way. Whether everyone's going to catch on, we'll see. And that, ended up being the case because now there's like 1,000,001 Bears podcasts right now, which is great because you can be your own creator, right? Mm-hmm. You don't need to join another podcast. You can make your own. But I've always been really fascinated with technology. And so if it's making digital content, I've always been very interested in that. One of the things that I believe differentiates me from some of the other people, not only on the Bears beat but the NFL beats, is like I will bring the all 22 coaches film into the locker room and let's talk about it with the players right then and there. These are the guys that actually know what's going on with these plays. And we have a lot of people who think they know everything in a given play online, but the best person to ask is the person who's involved. They tell me as much as they can without revealing, secrets about a game plan, which I completely understand, but that I love doing because I know not only am I interested in it, but I know my readers, listeners, viewers are also interested in it. And that's what I also like to remember when just at times when I'm in Hallis Hall, like I have I have access that a lot of people don't. How can I use this not just for the best of my ability, but for the best of everybody's ability that may be thinking of the same questions that I am? So always been interested in technology. I think that's where that allowed me to kind of really just this new digital media age, take it on and see where it goes.
In that environment, when you're at Hallis Hall or at games, you see the different personalities in people and just the different environment and focus level of people. So how do you act in those areas, or how do you respond in those areas, knowing that, hey, this is like a different environment than what people like you were saying, they usually don't get this access?
Yeah, so I mean, it definitely was an adjustment period for me initially, especially when I was just blogging for, the website that I was a part of, because now I was in the room with people from NBC Sports, ESPN, the Chicago Tribune. Sometimes I was like, whoa, this is at the time maybe 20, 21. And I remember like it took me a while to just even ask that first question at a press conference. Like, am I allowed to do this? Like I'm with all the high rollers right now, right?
Yeah.
So I remember being slightly reserved, but then as you start to just be around those people and know that, wait, I'm here for a reason too. Like I'm writing, the same articles, similar things, and, thinking about these questions that you are as well. So I think it just took time and reps for me to understand, like, I have a place in this as well. And that's where, if you're someone who's trying to get into this, like, that's the same exact mindset you should have. Like, just because you haven't maybe had that big time job or that internship or whatever it may be, it doesn't mean that you're less qualified. It's just you haven't had those opportunities. So go for it.
Yeah.
Right. But I remember that being the hurdle initially, but now it's just kind of like when you see Hallis Hall and some of the media that's there, it's not just your traditional media. It's not just your newspapers. It is your podcast, your YouTube channels, your more digital media focused. And that's exactly where I fall in line there.
That's what people don't realize. If you have a credential and you're there, you deserve to be there. So then you should be able to ask questions and do what you need to do there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, it takes time to understand that, especially when it's the first time. And so, but yeah, if you have a credential, every right to be there. I have seen times where, at times the NFL scouting combine, I think just credentials literally everybody and their grandmother. And then you see some like questionable tactics. I remember even Caleb Williams, his press conference for the combine where he had just stepped up to the podium. I was literally first row with a couple of other people. And then somebody from the way, way back kind of shouts out a question like, why are you afraid to compete? And does so in a way that is, one, Caleb Williams, he was about to like introduce himself, and then that came out of nowhere. It's just like, if you're going for like you're trying to get the big quote or whatever the tactic was, like, yeah, maybe his approach got what he wanted, but there are certain I think there's a standard of professionalism that you got to follow. But again, it may just take time to understand that, depending on where you kind of want to line up in your media career.
You have a good partnership with Winnie City Sports Cards as well. What have you learned about that marketing side? Because that's a big part of this too, with YouTube channels and podcasts and things, is the marketing side. And I'm still trying to learn that as well. So what would you say about the marketing side that's really helped you?
Yeah, so I think a big thing is you are a brand, right? So everything we do, you represent yourself and you are a brand. And I think it also goes back to just making a bunch of different connections. I remember for Windy City Sports Cards, that was somebody that I knew based off of just some of my Twitter followers and just interacting and understanding that, not maybe at the time it's like, I don't know if this will ever amount to anything, but just having good networking skills and just being able to see everybody as, someone that can maybe help you out down the line, or you just have a good connection. Like that's where like at the base level, like, hey, it's interacting, talking with people. And that's what everybody I think should do, because you never know down the road where something can be like a potential partnership or sponsorship, whatever it may be. But yeah, so I just remember that being someone that I constantly followed. Doing Bears content made sense for, their brand and what they do. So that ended up being something that, I'm really fortunate to have. So I would say for everybody, it's like remembering that you are your own brand. You can then still, even if you don't know if anything's going to amount to something down the road, doesn't hurt. Again, it doesn't hurt to reach out, to be friendly, to make a connection, and then you can see where it goes from there.
Last thing I always ask people on here, you say you taught at DePaul, you went to Iowa. So if you went back to Iowa, or some of the students that you taught at DePaul asked you for advice, what would be the most important advice that you would give?
Yeah, if you're going to get into this industry, it's one, you want to be somebody that can do a little bit of everything. Because I think that's what a lot of jobs want at this point in time. Someone that can write the article, can write for YouTube or write for digital media, but you know how to edit the podcast. You could be the front facing person on the podcast, and then you can also make the video content as well. So reach out and try different things. Maybe you'll find that your strengths are better in one area than other, but if you are well-rounded, that just prepares you for whatever may come up in your journey for a job in media. So that's always the biggest advice I give. And if you haven't started something, my question is why? Do you have a phone? Yeah. Do you have would it be great to have a nicer mic, things like that? Of course, but you have a cell phone. That's all that's at the baseline of what you need to make a YouTube channel, to make YouTube shorts, content on Instagram, TikTok, whatever it may be. And you just have to do it. Yes, I'll tell you this right now. It is going to be horrible when you start off. You're going to look at some of the videos you make and they're going to be so cringy. And I showed my students my very first Bears video I ever made. And I kid you not, I was just trying to hide and just everything imaginable. I'm like, guys, that's what it starts off like. I promise you. And you know what? You may be at a better spot than I was, but that's where I was at. And so just to kind of show everybody that where you start is not where you're going to end up a week from there, a month, whatever it may be. So you just got to do it though. And if you're holding back, you're just missing out on opportunities. And I always say reps, because that's what this is. You get your reps in, you become more comfortable, and then you just never know where this can end up taking you.
That's how this channel started. I just, got the microphone, got the webcam, hit record. Here we go, editing everything. So here we are now. So when we're growing, and yeah, that's how I feel about like looking back at my college reels too, or like reels from my first 2 jobs in local news. I'm just like, all right, I'm not gonna look at that. No way. But no, I appreciate you though coming on, Nick. But let people know if they already don't follow you or know about you, where they can follow you and see your work.
Yeah, so big on Twitter at Nicholas Moreano. So you can follow me there. I'm going to post all my articles that I write for Roundtable Sports. If you look up Roundtable Sports Bears, you'll most likely see my face for my article on there as well. And then the recap YouTube channel. So I've been creating content from there as well. There'll be a video out later today, something related to the Bears. Don't quite know yet, but we'll get there at some point. So Twitter's going to be definitely the biggest one that I post on. And then, I will post those same videos on Instagram, TikTok. Nicholas Moreano is the handle for all of those. But that's where you can follow me and everything that I do on the Bears. And once later July, we get a little bit later in July, there'll actually be things that we can talk about with this football team.
We look forward to that, Nicholas. I appreciate you hanging out with me here on Cousins Conversations, man.
Appreciate it, Nick. Thank you.